The purpose of tonight's video is to show a photographer how to edit a photo whereby part of the photo can be extracted and moved to another photo for a more pleasant outcome. For example, a bird could be the subject that would be cut out, which would be demonstrated tonight, into a background that can either be created or it can be another photograph that the photographer has already taken. So this process was shared to Vinny, who shared it with me. The process was created by David Janes, a member of the club. So it's his process that you will learn about tonight. So I'm going to turn it over to Vinny now, who's going to demonstrate this simple process, which, by the way, uses only Photoshop, no other plugins or no other software, just Photoshop. I hope this is a meaningful video for you who wants to learn how to do this. Vinny, you're on.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to start off by showing you the initial image first. It's a JPEG image. This was shot at my bird feeder, and you can see the bird is in good focus. The background sucks, but we're going to fix that.
And what kind of bird is that, Vinny?
This is a Nande parakeet. And this is one of the fixes I did, one of the backgrounds, and this is another one, and by no means the last, but in any event, without further ado, let me go. I'm just dragging the image directly into Photoshop. And we're going to cut this image out, and we're going to create a PNG file, which we will save separately, and we will use that PNG file to create other images or whatever we want. The sky's the limit. So,
and why do you want to do that? What's the problem with this photo?
It speaks to my artistic side. I love to manipulate images and present them in their best light. The big problem with this is the background is just not, doesn't make the bird pop.
Exactly.
It's a beautiful bird, and I think it should pop. And there's a couple of ways of doing that. The one we're going to talk about tonight is just creating the PNG images and then moving this image, the PNG, onto another background, either created or another natural background. So,
well, let's get started.
Okay. First things first, this is a JPEG image. We are in Photoshop. And if you notice down here in the layers panel, there's a background layer. If you had worked this image from a raw file, you might have multiple layers down here, in which case I would ask you to go and flatten the image. And basically it'd be layer flatten. I can't do it now because it's only one layer. But to start this process off, we're going to double click on the background layer, which I just did. And it's going to bring another box up. It says new layer, layer 0. And we're going to click OK. And now if you notice down here in the layers panel, that layer 0 is highlighted, and that's what we're working with. All right, now, first things we're going to do is we want to outline the image. We want to outline the portion of the image we want to create a PNG file from.
We want a subject.
The subject, yeah. And I basically chose this image because it's the subject is fairly well defined. So I would go over here to my tools panel. And there are 3 selections within that one: the object selection tool, quick selection tool, and the magic wand tool. We're going to start with the object selection tool, and then we're going to go up to the over here where it says select subject, and we're going to click on it and let the Photoshop go to work. Voila. It has found the subject. It has very neatly outlined it. So that's step 1. Now for this particular image, we're going to go directly to the magic wand tool. We don't need this time the quick selection tool, but the magic wand tool. Oh, Bob, you made me forget something. Before we do that, I want to go back up here to the menu bar and drop the select menu down and then select. Oh, what happened to my marching ants? I get rid of my marching ants. Let me do that one more time. That's what happens when you let Bob intimidate you. When we go to select inverse, and now if you notice, the entire image has marching ants around it in the subject. Now, go back to this panel, and we're looking for the magic wand tool. Click on it. Now, if you see the house, it's the home, the magic toolkit, and you have a 1, 2, 3, 4 boxes, 4 icons, I should say. The selection tool, the add to the selection, subtract to the selection, and I believe that's intersect with. So we want to make sure that this third one, the subtract from selection, is selected. Now we're going to go to the backspace key, and we're going to give it a tap. And whoa, look at that, the entire background disappeared. Now, the subject remained, the marching ants are still there. We need to get rid of the marching ants. One of the problems with Photoshop is that there's 18 ways from Sunday to do the same thing. And when you find one you like, stick with it. I'm going to show you the Control D. Control D will get rid of it. That's deselect. So we have the parakeet on a transparent background. You can see that those little squares mean that. Now the next step in this is to save it as a PNG file, PNG file. So you go File, Save As. All right, I see it's already saved there, but I'm not going to. Now, one of the things I do, just to keep them separate, is I will put them in a different section of the file that I'm working in. And to do that, I arbitrarily selected the letter H. So all of my PNG files, except for that one, have the letter H on it, because that tends to group them together if you're going to save them in, with other JPEG files. So
The PNG files.
Right, and the H is just mine. So if you want to use H, that's fine. If you want to use J, whatever. If you don't want to use anything at all, it's up to you. So just save as a PNG file and then save. Item is already there, of course, as you can see, and I'm just going to click yes. And there we go.
Now at this point, you can create a background, or
Yep.
you can out of your inventory of photographs that you might have as a background, you could choose one of those. But Vinny is going to create a background for you.
Right, yeah, but we decided not to do that right now, right?
Oh, we're not?
I could do that, let's just move on to the second ping, and then we'll talk about backgrounds. Okay?
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna bring my second image in, and this is of a flamingo. Now, this is shot at one of my favorite places, which is the Sarasota Jungle Gardens. And I chose this image because it's a little bit more complicated than the parakeet. And we're going to show you how to handle that right now. Essentially, we start off the same way. We double click on the background layer, create layer 0. And we come over here to the object selection tool, select subject, and let Photoshop do its work. Okay, now, what I mean by a little bit more complicated is if you look real closely, the beak is not totally, doesn't have the marching ants around it. And we're going to work on doing that now. And to do that, we're going to go to the quick selection tool, which brings up a whole another little section here. But two of the options is the plus and the minus. Plus will add to the selection, and minus will detract from the selection. I could change my brush size by the right bracket or lowering it to the lower bracket. And then basically I'll just go and I'll drag it down to.
You are on the plus side now.
I'm on the plus side now, yep.
Right. So you're adding to the selection.
Now, I'm gonna try.
You got a little blip on the selection that you need to remove. So what do you do?
I'm gonna tell you that I'm gonna try to move that. When I say try, it doesn't always work, but it's better to have more selected than less because you can always go back in and fix it later on. So I'm going to select the remove from selection, subtract from selection, and then a very small brush, I'm just going to bring it up just on the inside of that marching ants and try to go down around. Oop, there we go. Look at that. It actually did it. Now, I want to make it just a tiny bit bigger. Here we go. I don't know about you, but I'm impressed. All right, now let's look at what else we have down here. Okay, the foot. Now, one of the things that's wrong with this image is that the feet aren't well defined. And so it makes for difficult to use this in other scenarios, but we're gonna try. So I'm gonna go to the add to selection with a very small brush, and I'm going to just drag it out and try to go, oop, see what happened? The selection went way beyond. So I'm just gonna do the old standby Control Z, and we'll go back to where we were. So you just do a little at a time. And that's pretty good, actually. And we can always go and fix up the selection later on. Now with this foot, not a whole lot more, but we're going to try to bring this out a little bit. Ooh, I'm getting good at this, Bob.
I see that.
Right now, let's look at the tail. With birds, with the feathers, obviously, there's always something, especially in the tail. Now you can see it didn't go all the way up to the crux there. So I'm going to select the subtract from Now, by the way, every now and then I'll get them mixed up, and really it's not a problem as long as you remember Control Z. So I'm going to take, again, with a very small brush, start at the top of the marching ant and just bring it up and let it go. A little bit more, let it go. That's pretty good. Now, another little area here, which is going to be a little bit more difficult. So I'm going to make my brush really tiny. I'm going to try to get it up into one. Ta-da. I got these two areas here. Now, worst comes to worst, I'll leave it. Oh, there we go. I love the way it just automatically fixes itself.
Photoshop is pretty clever. These guys that, men and women that created Photoshop are really very smart.
I'll tell you, absolutely. I got new respect for these guys. I'm going to bring, uh-oh,
Oh,
what happened?
you hit something, the wrong key.
All right, well, in that case, what do we do now? Well, we start all over again. Oh, there we go.
Now, what do you do to bring it back?
I have no idea.
Okay.
All right, I want to bring this one down a little bit.
Do you have a touch screen on your laptop? Maybe
I do, actually.
Maybe that's what happened.
Oh, maybe.
So you're extending the marching ants to the very, very end of that feather.
That's right.
Looks pretty good.
Yeah, and you'll see over here, and I could play with that a little bit. And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. And if it doesn't work, we'll take care of it a little bit later. Are we done? Let's see. Yeah, no. Yeah, about.
Now at this point, it's very important to really zoom in on your selected object, because you will find, if you don't look carefully, there will be inconsistency of the marching ants. And
there you go, right there.
And there you go.
I'm not going to do that. All right, so this one is going to give me a little trouble. I'm just going to leave it. Like I say, easy enough to fix
Later.
Another quick. And again, I've got this to set where I could zoom on scroll wheel, so I can get it pretty done. That's what, 1000%. You can see it's pixelating. All right, let's take the next step, which was, what was the next step, Robert?
The next step is to deselect.
No.
No?
Select inverse.
Well, that's basically what I meant to say.
Okay. Now we go back to the tools panel. We select magic wand and make sure that the subtract from selection is selected. Space bar on the keyboard. Voila. Now get rid of the marching ants by doing a
Deselect.
no, yeah. How do I do that?
Well, you could go up to the select on the
you could do that, or just a Control D on this keyboard.
or a Control D.
Like I used to.
You weren't using the shortcuts, so that's why I suggested the deselect.
Okay. Now, you can make some changes right here now, but I found it, for some reason or other, it's easier for me to work with if I save it first, save as, ping. Now this one already has an H. I'm just going to do an H2 so I know which one it was. By the way, if you have all updated your Photoshop recently, you realize that they're forcing you to do a save as copy. And you can go back to the legacy save as very simply by going to edit preferences, file handling, and then make sure that this enables legacy save as checked. It'll go back to the way you used to. Okay, I'm going to close this image and I'm going to bring it back into Photoshop. And I did that because to me, it's just a little bit easier to deal with than to deal with the image before I saved it. Now, we're going close. You want to see what I did or didn't do. Now, a lot of stuff you see, I did not get perfect. And in some instances, we want to take away, like right here. In some instances, we want to fill in, like right here. So let's do take away first, in which case I'm using the eraser tool at the opacity 100%, flow 100%. Even still, it works a little bit. And again, just very gently take away what we don't want. Did everybody see that? There'll be more. The big problem, the big difference between doing it in Photoshop and doing it in Topaz. In Topaz, you have a button that says, let me see the original. And the only way I could do that is if I, just open the original JPEG. And right now I'm going to wing it. So I'm going to use the spot healing brush with the content aware. I'm just going to smooth out this beak. Now, if you notice, okay, there we go. Now, there we go. Okay, now we still got to clean that up a little bit. So we'll go back to the eraser tool. We want to smooth that out. Oop, everybody see what I did? Okay. I want to go down, make this a clean line. So what I'm doing is I'll hit the eraser tool here and then bring it up a little bit, hold the shift key down, and get a straight line. Or you could just erase it down. All right, the idea is to get it as clean as possible. Spot I need to fill in. A couple of spots we need to take away. I'm working here. I'm not talking, Bob. Is it clear what I'm doing, or should I explain a little bit more?
I think it's pretty obvious what you're doing. You're either erasing or adding, uh, and you're flipping between the E key and the J key. The J key brings the healing brush in, and the E key brings in the eraser tool.
Okay, thank you for saying that, because I actually have been just using the selecting it from my tools panel, but yes, the JK and the E key.
And the other key that you would be using a lot is the hand tool, which is the H key to move around, and the zoom tool, which is the Z key.
I have a scroll wheel, so I'm just doing right by scroll. It's just easier for me. Right now, if you notice down here, it looks like an X-ray. We got to bring some of that foot back. I don't know what happened to it. I make my brush a little bit bigger. Fill it in. And again, this wouldn't be the best foot to use in a composite unless you're going to put them underwater. But putting it underwater is another lesson. If you go a little bit too much, you can always add and put back. So it's one of the reasons I zoom in so much. All right, there we go. Don't look too bad.
I think the back part of that foot has got a lot of the background in it.
Yeah, you're probably right. Yep. Go back and pick up the
The E key.
eraser brush. All right, now the tail feathers, always something going on with the tail feathers.
Now you're zoomed in at what, 700%? 400? I can't read it. It's
Looks like 400, 400 and yeah, 800 now. But yeah, you can zoom in pretty high.
Yeah, you're down to a single pixel level when you get up that. I mean, zoom in that much.
My problem when I get to this part is I'm like all over the image, and it's best to stay on one area at a time.
Yeah, make sure it's cleaned up properly before you move on. Otherwise, you might forget about it, and then you have to go back and redo it.
This is my therapy, Bob. It's what keeps me sane.
You're at 1178 now. You really got it blown up.
Yeah, but then when you get it back to normal, it looks so much better. Okay. There we go. That was the next level of intensity. All right, now we have the flamingo on a transparency. And the next step is to save it as a PNG file. File, save as. PNG comes up. That's what we want. Copy to already exists. There we go.
So are you going to put one of these creations that of the two, one of the parakeet and one of the flamingo, are you going to put one of them on a background tonight?
I could do that, yeah.
Why don't you do that? That would be a good way to finish this up.
Okay. I'm gonna put the flamingo on. This is a texture I worked on before. This is cropped 10 by 10, I believe. But since we're doing a long subject, I'm going to crop it 8 by 10. There we go. And then how I created this real quick, we could do that in detail another time, was I just did file new, created a black document, which is a JPEG file at 300 DPI. I put used the circular marquee tool, filled it with a green color, and applied a Gaussian blur to it. And then I took it into Topaz Studio, and I put that grainy texture to it. Really all I did. All right, now, a couple of things you could do, just to be fancy for a minute. I could put in a stroke. And basically you just draw the box. Now the stroke is going to come out this dark green, which is not good. You can't see it. Cancel, cancel, cancel. File, stroke. All right. So we want to do it at a lighter color. So I'm just going to go up here, make that a little, remove the marching ants, and now we have a inner stroke. Now there are a couple of ways of getting this image into.
You want to put that image inside of the stroke?
No, I'm going to put it. No, I'm going to put it around the stroke actually. So.
Around the stroke, okay.
Yeah. There you go. Place it. That's one way you do it. I just dragged it and dropped it. Another way of doing it is I could do file, place embedded, grab a copy, and there you go. Again, I could resize it. Move it. Oops. Move him. And there you have it. Flamingo on a background.
Very nice.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We're going to stop here tonight. This will be part 1. I'm going to do a part 2. I'm just going to delete this without saving it. And we're going to do it with these 2 images. We're going to do this bird of paradise, which you can see from the background is not the cleanest. Subject is not, by itself, and it's going to take a little bit more work. And the other one we're going to do, believe it or not, is this. This is a leaf from a bottle brush tree that I shot just right in front of my house this morning. And we're going to be able to do something like this with it. Obviously not the best background, but we're going to cut that out too. So stay tuned. Thank you very much for your attention. Any questions? Robert will answer them. Bob, we're done.
Thanks for paying attention. We hope you've learned a little bit on how to use Photoshop to cut out part of a picture and save it as a PNG file and use that part of the picture on a background that you either can create yourself or extract it from the internet. Anyway, we'll come back again very soon, so stay tuned.
I just want to add before we leave that there are some images I just can't get this method to work with. Probably my shortcoming, and in which case I'll go back to do it in Topaz. But for right now, this has been handling well over 99% of my cutout needs.
And Vinny showed me this technique about a week ago, and I've been spending a lot of time using this technique, and I find it's much better than what I was using in Topaz Mask AI.
Yeah, a lot faster too.
This is a faster and more precise way of cutting out an object out of the photo to put that object on a different background. Anyway, thank you for listening. And we are going to post this video up on the club's website. YouTube.
Yeah, on the YouTube channel. We'll get there. And thank you, David James. And thanks for listening. Good night.
Good night, all.